The text message sat unread on Dante Volkov's phone for exactly 47 minutes before his world ended. Sofia wifey, 2:34 p.m. Dante, please. I'm at Mercy, General. Something's wrong. I need you. But Dante didn't see it, couldn't see it. His phone lay face down on the mahogany conference table in the private room of Russo's, the Italian restaurant that served as neutral ground for the 5 families that controlled Chicago's underworld. Across from him sat Viktor Konstantin, head of the Russian Bratva's Chicago operations, flanked by 2 stone-faced lieutenants whose hands never strayed far from their concealed weapons. You insult me with this offer, Volkov, Viktor said, his accent thick as he pushed the contract back across the table. The docks are worth 3 times what you propose. You think because you control the South Side, you can dictate terms to me? Dante's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled, that dangerous calm that made even hardened criminals nervous. I think because your organization has been hemorrhaging money for 6 months, you're in no position to negotiate. Take the offer, Viktor. It's generous considering your situation. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The Russian's face flushed red, his hand slamming down on the table hard enough to rattle the crystal water glasses. My situation? You're the one whose wife texts him during business hours like a desperate... The phone had buzzed. Viktor had seen the screen light up with Sofia's name. And now he was using it as ammunition. Dante's eyes went cold as winter steel. Finish that sentence, and you'll leave this room in pieces. Marco, Dante's second in command, shifted slightly beside him, a subtle movement that had Viktor's men tensing. The air in the room crackled with potential violence. Viktor raised his hands in mock surrender, though his smile was cruel. Touchy about the wife, I see. Perhaps if you paid her more attention, she wouldn't need to beg for it. Like Dante was out of his chair before Viktor could finish, his hand wrapped around the Russian's throat, slamming him back against the leather booth. Marco and Viktor's men drew weapons simultaneously, a Mexican standoff that could turn this negotiation into a massacre in seconds. Dante, Marco said quietly, his tone a warning. Not here, not now. We're on neutral ground. Every muscle in Dante's body screamed to crush the windpipe beneath his fingers. To make Viktor pay for every word, every implication about Sofia. But Marco was right. Rules existed for a reason, and breaking them would start a war Chicago couldn't afford. Slowly, deliberately, Dante released his grip and stepped back. Viktor gasped, clutching his throat, rage and fear warring in his eyes. We're done here, Dante said, his voice flat and final. You have 24 hours to accept my offer, or I pull it entirely and let your organization collapse under its own incompetence. He grabbed his phone from the table, still face down, still unread, and strode toward the exit, Marco falling into step behind him. Boss, Marco said once they were in the hallway, away from listening ears. That was dangerous. Viktor's pride? I don't give a damn about Viktor's pride, Dante interrupted, pulling out his phone to finally check what Sofia had wanted. Probably another charity event she wanted him to attend, or a dinner reservation she'd made that he'd need to cancel because of work. She'd been trying so hard lately to bridge the distance that had grown between them over the past year, distance that Dante had deliberately created. It was easier that way, safer for her. His world was violence and blood and impossible choices, and Sofia, sweet, gentle Sofia, who volunteered at the children's hospital and believed in the fundamental goodness of people, deserved better than to be contaminated by it. They'd been married for 18 months now, and for the first 6, Dante had fooled himself into thinking he could have both. Could be the ruthless boss his organization needed and the husband Sofia deserved. But reality had intruded in the form of threats, close calls, and the dawning realization that loving Sofia made her a target. So he'd pulled away, worked longer hours, took business trips that lasted weeks, filled his schedule so completely that there was no room for quiet dinners or lazy Sunday mornings. He told himself it was for her protection, that distance would keep her safe. He told himself she'd be happier this way, eventually, that she'd adjust to being married to a ghost. The text message appeared on his screen, and Dante's steps slowed as he read it. Dante, please. I'm at Mercy General. Something's wrong. I need you. Mercy General, the hospital. Something's wrong. Ice flooded his veins. His thumb was already dialing her number before his conscious mind fully processed the words. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. Sophia, it's me, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. I just saw your message. What's wrong? Where are you? Call me back immediately. He hung up and immediately tried again. Voicemail again. Marco, Dante said, his tone sharp with rising alarm. Get the car. Now. We're going to Mercy General. Marco's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise from a man who'd been with Dante for 10 years and had learned to read his moods like a weather vane. What happened? I don't know, Dante admitted, and those 3 words tasted like failure in his mouth. He was a man who made it his business to know everything, to control every variable, and he didn't know why his wife was in a hospital texting him for help. The drive to Mercy General took 12 minutes through Chicago's afternoon traffic, with Carlos behind the wheel breaking every traffic law in existence. Dante tried Sophia's number 6 more times. Each attempt went straight to voicemail, and with each failed call, the knot of dread in his stomach tightened. He'd been ignoring her for weeks now, dodging her attempts at conversation, her invitations to dinner, her gentle questions about when he'd be home. She'd stopped trying as frequently over the past month, her texts becoming shorter, less frequent. He'd told himself that was good, that she was finally accepting the new reality of their marriage. Now, staring at that message, something's wrong. I need you, he realized how catastrophically stupid he'd been. Boss, Marco said from the front seat, his phone pressed to his ear. I've got someone checking with the hospital. They're asking what? Just find out if she's there, Dante interrupted. And if she is, I want to know her condition. Now, Marco spoke rapidly in Italian, his expression growing more concerned with each passing second. When he finally lowered the possible phone, his face was carefully neutral. The look he wore when delivering news Dante wouldn't want to hear. She's there, Marco confirmed. Emergency department. They admitted her about an hour ago. An hour. She'd been there for an hour while Dante had been threatening Viktor Konstantin over dock contracts. Condition? Dante demanded. Marco hesitated. They wouldn't tell my contact. Said only immediate family can get that information. I'm her husband, Dante said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage at himself, at the situation, at the universe for putting Sophia in danger. I know, boss. We'll be there in 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Dante's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. An accident? She'd been in an accident and he hadn't been there. An attack? Had someone from a rival organization targeted her to get to him? Was this Viktor's doing some twisted retaliation for the disrespect at Russo's? Or was it something medical? Something she'd been hiding from him because he'd been too distant, too unavailable for her to feel she could share it? The Mercedes screeched to a halt outside Mercy General's emergency entrance. Dante was out before the car fully stopped, Marco close behind with 2 additional security personnel fanning out to secure the perimeter. The automatic doors parted before him, and Dante stormed into the controlled chaos of the emergency department. Nurses and scrubs moved efficiently between rooms, monitors beeped in rhythmic patterns, and the smell of antiseptic and fear hung thick in the air. I'm looking for Sophia Volkov, Dante said to the first nurse he encountered, a young woman with kind eyes who took one look at the man in the $3,000 suit, radiating barely controlled violence, and took an involuntary step backward. Sir, are you family? I'm her husband, Dante said, biting off each word. Where is she? The nurse's expression shifted to something that looked dangerously close to pity. Let me get the doctor. If you could just wait. No. The word came out harder than he intended. I'm not waiting. I'm not sitting in a waiting room while my wife is somewhere in this hospital needing me. You will tell me where Sofia Volkov is right now, or I will tear this building apart room by room until I find her. Marco placed a restraining hand on Dante's arm, but his attention never left the nurse. Please, he added, his voice slightly gentler than Dante's. We're very concerned. Any information you can provide would be appreciated. The nurse looked between them, clearly calculating whether hospital protocol was worth the confrontation. I'll get Dr. Richardson, she finally said. Please just wait here for 2 minutes. She hurried off, and Dante forced himself to breathe, to maintain control. Losing it now wouldn't help Sofia, but every second that passed without answers felt like nails being driven into his chest. A man in a white coat emerged from a restricted area, moving toward them with the kind of careful authority that marked him as someone used to delivering difficult news. He was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes that had seen too much suffering. Mr. Volkov? He asked, extending his hand. I'm Dr. Richardson. I've been treating your wife. Dante ignored the offered hand. Where is she? What happened? Doctor. Richardson lowered his hand, his expression grave. Perhaps we should speak somewhere private. Here is fine, Dante interrupted. Tell me what happened to my wife. The doctor took a breath, clearly organizing his thoughts. Your wife was brought in approximately 65 minutes ago by ambulance. She'd collapsed at home. A neighbor found her and called 911. When paramedics arrived, she was unconscious and barely responsive. Collapsed. At home. Alone. While Dante had been in a meeting that could have waited. Should have waited. What caused it? Dante asked, his voice hollow. Mr. Volkov, when was the last time you spoke with your wife? I mean, really spoke with her, about her health, her concerns? Dante's jaw clenched. What does that have to do with? Because if you had, Doctor, Richardson interrupted gently, you would know that Sofia has been experiencing severe symptoms for the past 3 weeks. Fatigue, dizziness, shortness of breath. She came to our outpatient clinic twice, seeking help, and we'd been running tests. 3 weeks. Sofia had been sick for 3 weeks, and Dante hadn't noticed, hadn't asked, hadn't been present enough in her life to see that something was wrong. What's the diagnosis? Marco asked when Dante couldn't find words. Doctor. Richardson's expression grew even more somber. Severe anemia combined with internal bleeding. We're still determining the exact cause, but your wife's hemoglobin levels were critically low when she arrived. We've started blood transfusions and we're running more tests. But Mr. Volkov, he paused, choosing his words carefully. The next few hours are critical. Sofia is very sick, and we're doing everything we can. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that, no, Dante said, the word sharp and absolute. Don't say it. Don't even think it. She's going to be fine. You're going to make sure she's fine. Money is no object. Get specialists. Get whatever equipment you need. I don't care what it costs. This isn't about money, Doctor, Richardson said quietly. This is about time and biology, and then give her more time, Dante said, and he could hear the desperation creeping into his voice now, all his careful control cracking like ice over deep water. Do whatever you have to do. Keep her alive. That's not a request, Doctor. That's an order. Dr. Richardson studied him for a long moment. I'll do everything medically possible. But Mr. Volkov, your wife needs more than medical intervention right now. When she regained consciousness briefly before we sedated her for the transfusion, she was asking for you, kept saying your name, begging us to call you. The words hit Dante like physical blows. Sofia had been calling for him, begging for him. And his phone had been face down on a conference table while he'd threatened a Russian mobster over business deals that suddenly seemed utterly meaningless. Take me to her, Dante said. Now. She's sedated, Dr. Richardson explained. She won't know you're there. I'll know I'm there, Dante said. And maybe some part of her will know too. Take me to my wife, Doctor, please. The please seemed to decide it. Dr. Richardson nodded and gestured for them to follow. Only you, he said, looking at Marco and the security team. Hospital policy. Marco nodded his understanding, and Dante followed the doctor through a maze of corridors, through doors marked restricted access, into the intensive care unit where the truly critical patients fought for survival. Nothing in Dante's life, not the violence he today witnessed, not the death he dealt, not the worst days of building his empire had prepared him for the sight of SOFIA in that hospital bed. She looked impossibly small beneath the white sheets, her olive skin pale and waxy, dark circles beneath her eyes making her look bruised. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed, monitoring every struggle of her body to survive. An IV dripped blood into her arm, someone else's blood, because her own had betrayed her. Her long dark hair, usually so carefully styled, spread across the pillow in tangled waves. Her hands rested at her sides, delicate and still, and Dante could see the faint bruising where IV needles had been inserted, then repositioned, then inserted again. This was his fault, all of it. His fault for not being there, for not paying attention, for convincing himself that distance would keep her safe when all it had done was leave her alone and vulnerable. "I'll give you some privacy," Dr. Richardson said, quietly. "But Mr. Volkov, you should know we found something else during our examination." Dante's eyes snapped to the doctor. "What?" "Your wife is pregnant. Approximately 8 weeks along. The pregnancy itself doesn't seem to be causing the current crisis, but it does complicate treatment options. We'll need to be very careful about medications, procedures, anything that might affect the baby." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Dante's feet. Pregnant. SOFIA was pregnant with his child, and he hadn't known. She hadn't told him. Or maybe she'd tried to tell him, and he'd been too busy, too distant, too wrapped up in his own world to hear. "Does she know?" Dante asked, his voice rough. "About the pregnancy?" "Yes," Dr. Richardson confirmed. "We told her when she was briefly conscious. She seemed surprised, but—" He paused. "She seemed happy, Mr. Volkov. Despite everything, despite how sick she is, she smiled when we told her." Of course she had. SOFIA had always wanted children, had mentioned it carefully, hesitantly, during their first year of marriage, testing whether Dante shared that dream. He'd deflected, made non-committal noises about someday and when things are more stable. Because how could he bring a child into his world? How could he make SOFIA a mother when being his wife already put her in constant danger? But apparently the universe had decided for him. SOFIA was carrying his child, fighting for her life, and Dante had been ignoring her texts because he'd been too important, too busy, too fucking stupid to realize what he had until it was slipping away. "Thank you, doctor," Dante said quietly, "for everything you're doing." Dr. Richardson nodded and left, closing the door with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Alone with SOFIA, Dante approached the bed slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter this fragile moment. He pulled a chair close and sat, taking her hand carefully in his own, mindful of the IV line and the monitors. Her skin was cool, too cool, and her fingers didn't curl around his the way they usually did. She just lay there, still and silent except for the steady beep of her heart monitor. "SOFIA," Dante said, his voice breaking on her name. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. That I didn't answer. That I've been—" He had to stop, had to breathe past the tightness in his throat. "I've been an idiot, a coward, telling myself I was protecting you by staying away, when really I was just protecting myself from caring too much. From being vulnerable." The machines beeped on, measuring her heartbeat, her blood pressure, her struggle to survive. "You have to fight," Dante continued, his grip tightening on her hand. "You have to come back to me, SOFIA. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've been a terrible husband, but I'm asking anyway. Begging. Fight for me. Fight for our baby." His voice cracked on the last word. "Our baby, SOFIA. We're going to have a baby, and you have to be here for it. Have to be. Here to tell me I'm doing everything wrong, to teach me how to be a father. because God knows I don't have the first clue how to do this." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I love you," he whispered. "I should have said it more, should have shown it better. But I love you, Sophia. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I nearly lost you because I was too damn blind to see it." A soft knock at the door interrupted his confession. A nurse entered, the same young woman from earlier, with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, Mr. Volkov, but I need to check Mrs. Volkov's vitals and adjust her medications." Dante nodded and released Sophia's hand, stepping back to give the nurse room to work. He watched as she efficiently checked the monitors, made notations on a chart, adjusted the IV drip. "How long have you been working here?" Dante asked suddenly. The nurse looked up, surprised by the question. 3 years. "Why? Have you seen Sophia before, when she came to the outpatient clinic?" The nurse hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Once. About 2 weeks ago. She seemed tired, mentioned feeling dizzy. I remember her because she was so kind, asked about my shift, whether I'd had lunch yet. Most patients don't think about things like that. That was Sophia, always thinking of others, even when she was the one suffering." "Did she mention me?" Dante asked, already knowing the answer would hurt. The nurse's expression turned sympathetic. She said her husband was very busy, that she didn't want to bother you with minor health concerns that had nearly killed her, because Dante had made her feel like she couldn't reach him, couldn't ask for help, couldn't be a priority in his life. "Thank you," Dante said quietly, "for taking care of her." The nurse finished her checks and left, and Dante returned to Sophia's side. Hours passed in that room, measured by the beeping of monitors and the slow drip of blood. Transfusions. Marco checked in periodically, bringing updates that Dante barely registered. Something about Viktor backing down, about deals being finalized, about business continuing as always. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the woman in this bed, and the impossible fragile hope that she would open her eyes. It was nearly midnight when Dr. Richardson returned, his expression cautiously optimistic. "The transfusions are helping," he said. "Her hemoglobin levels are improving. We've also identified the source of the bleeding, a perforated ulcer that we can treat with medication and possibly minor surgery once she's stable. The anemia is severe but manageable. Mr. Volkov, I think your wife is going to pull through this." Relief hit Dante so hard he had to grip the edge of the bed to stay upright. "And the baby? Still viable, still strong. Your wife is a fighter, Mr. Volkov." "I know," Dante said. "I've always known. I just forgot for a while." "Doctor," Richardson studied him, with those tired, knowing eyes. "We're going to keep her sedated through the night, to give her body time to stabilize. But tomorrow morning, we'll start bringing her out of it. If everything goes well, she should be conscious by afternoon." "I'll be here," Dante said. "I'm not leaving," and he didn't. Marco brought him fresh clothes, coffee, food he didn't eat. The hospital staff worked around him, checking Sophia's vitals, adjusting medications, whispering among themselves about the intense man who hadn't left his wife's side in 15 hours. Dawn broke over Chicago, painting the hospital room in shades of gold and amber. Dante sat in that chair, Sophia's hand in his, and made silent promises to himself and to her. If she survived this, when she survived this, everything would change. No more distance, no more pretending that keeping her at arm's length would keep her safe. He would be the husband she deserved, the father their child needed. He would be worthy of the second chance he was praying for. Around noon, Dr. Richardson returned with a small team. "We're going to start reducing the sedation," he explained. "It'll take a few hours for the medications to clear her system, but she should begin waking up naturally this afternoon." Dante nodded, unable to speak past the hope and fear warring in his chest. The hours crawled by. Slowly, gradually, Sophia's breathing changed, becoming less mechanical and more natural. Her fingers twitched in Dante's hand. Her eyelids fluttered, not quite opening but showing signs of consciousness trying to surface. At 3:47 p.m., exactly 25 hours after that unread text message had been sent, Sophia's eyes finally opened. For a moment, she seemed confused, her gaze unfocused as she tried to make sense of the hospital room, the monitors, the IV lines. Then her eyes found Dante's face, and something complex and painful crossed her expression. "Dante," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed hours earlier. "You came." The fact that she sounded surprised, that she doubted he would be there, was like a knife to Dante's heart. "Of course I came," he said, his thumb stroking gently over her knuckles. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I saw your text too late, and It's okay," she interrupted, though her eyes told a different story. "You were busy. You're always busy. I shouldn't have texted. Should have just called 911 myself instead of don't," Dante said sharply. "Don't apologize for needing me, for asking for help. Sophia, this is my fault, all of it. I've been avoiding you, pushing you away. And for what? Some misguided idea that distance would keep you safe?" He gave a bitter laugh. "Instead, it nearly killed you. Nearly killed our baby." Sophia's hand moved to her stomach, her eyes widening. "The baby?" the doctor said, "but is it really okay?" "After everything, the baby's fine," Dante assured her. "Strong, fighting, just like the mother." Tears slipped down Sophia's cheeks, and Dante reached up to gently wipe them away. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he continued. "I know I've been a terrible husband. But Sophia, I'm asking for a chance to make this right. To be the man you thought you were marrying. To be there for you and for our child. No more distance, no more walls. Just us, working together to build the family we both want." Sophia studied his face for a long moment, and Dante could see her weighing his words against 18 months of loneliness and neglect. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "I've been sleeping in the guest room for 3 weeks, Dante. Did you even notice?" The question hit like a physical blow. He hadn't noticed, hadn't been home enough to notice. "I waited up for you every night for 6 months," Sophia continued, each word careful and precise despite her weakness. "Made dinners that got cold, planned date nights you canceled, tried to talk to you about my day, my fears, my hopes for our future, and you looked through me like I was invisible, like I was an obligation instead of your wife." "I know," Dante said, his voice rough with emotion. "And I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover it. But Sophia, please, let me prove I can change. Let me show you that you and our baby are more important than anything else in my world." She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. "Why now?" she finally asked. "What's different now than yesterday, or last week, or last month?" "Because I nearly lost you," Dante said simply. "And in those hours when I didn't know if you'd survive, I realized that everything I've built, the power, the empire, the reputation, it's all worthless without you. You're my foundation, Sophia. You're what makes all of it mean something. And I've been so focused on protecting you from my world that I forgot to actually be present in yours." More tears slipped down Sophia's cheeks. "I don't want promises, Dante. I want consistency. I want a husband who doesn't make me feel like I'm competing with his phone for attention. I want a father for our baby who'll actually be there for birthdays and school plays and bedtime stories." "Then that's what you'll have," Dante vowed. "I swear to you, Sophia. On everything I am and everything I hope to become. You and our child come first, always." Sophia's hand tightened slightly on his. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "God, I want to believe you so badly. But Dante, you've broken my heart so many times in the past year." "How do I know this is different?" "Because I'm terrified," Dante admitted, his voice breaking. "Absolutely terrified of losing you. Of our child growing up without knowing me. Of dying alone because I pushed away the only person who ever really loved me. That fear, that's what's different now. I finally understand what I stand to lose." They sat in silence for a long moment, Sophia's hand in Dante's, the machines beeping steadily around them. Finally, Sophia spoke. "Okay," she said quietly. "One chance, Dante. One chance to prove that this isn't just fear talking, that when the crisis passes and life gets normal again, you'll still choose me. Choose us." Relief flooded through Dante, so intense it was almost painful. "I won't waste it," he promised. "I swear to you, Sophia, I won't waste it." And as he leaned forward to press a gentle kiss to her forehead, Dante Volkov made a silent vow. His wife had fought for life calling his name, and he would spend the rest of his days making sure she never regretted it. The first week of Sophia's recovery passed in a carefully constructed bubble. Dante had her transferred to a private suite on the hospital's top floor, the kind of accommodation reserved for dignitaries and people with unlimited resources. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. The room was furnished more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility, and a team of specialists rotated through to monitor both Sophia and the baby. Dante barely left her side. He conducted business from the armchair beside her bed, his laptop open, but his attention constantly returning to Sophia. When she slept, he worked quietly. When she woke, he was there immediately adjusting pillows, bringing water, asking if she needed anything. It was attentive, it was devoted. And Sophia could feel the performance of it, the desperate attempt to prove he'd changed. "You don't have to stay every night," she said on the fourth evening, watching him settle into the recliner that the hospital staff had brought in at his request. "You must be exhausted." "I'm fine," Dante replied, though the dark circles under his eyes told a different story. "Besides, I want to be here. Because you feel guilty," Sophia said quietly. "Not because you want to be." Dante's hands stilled on the blanket he'd been arranging. "That's not true, isn't it?" Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Dante, I appreciate everything you're doing. The private suite, the specialists, being here. But guilt is a terrible foundation for a marriage. Eventually the crisis will pass, and the guilt will fade, and we'll be right back where we were." "No," Dante said firmly, moving to sit on the edge of her bed. "This isn't guilt, Sophia. It's clarity. For the first time in 18 months, I can see clearly what matters." "And what happens when the next crisis comes?" Sophia asked. "When Viktor Konstantin or whoever calls with an emergency? When you have to choose between being here and handling business?" As if summoned by her words, Dante's phone buzzed on the bedside table. They both looked at it. The screen showed Marco's name. "Answer it," Sophia said, her voice carefully neutral. "I know you need to." Dante's jaw tightened. He picked up the phone, declined the call, and immediately powered it off. "No," he said. "Whatever it is can wait." Sophia's eyes widened slightly. In 18 months of marriage, she'd never seen Dante deliberately ignore a call from Marco. "Dante, if it's important, you're important," he interrupted. "You and our baby. That's what I'm trying to show you, Sophia. Marco knows not to call unless it's life or death, and if it were truly urgent, he'd come here in person. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." 20 minutes later, Marco did appear, his expression grim. He nodded respectfully to Sophia, then turned to Dante. "Boss, we need to talk. Privately. Anything you need to say can be said in front of my wife," Dante replied, not moving from Sophia's bedside. Marco glanced at Sophia, clearly uncomfortable. "It's about the Konstantin situation. Viktor's made a move. Hit one of our shipments coming through the docks, the ones we just negotiated for. Took everything and left 2 of our men in the hospital." Dante's expression went cold and hard, the transformation so complete that Sophia felt a chill run through her. This was the man the underworld feared, not the attentive husband sitting beside her, but the ruthless boss who controlled Chicago's South Side through calculated violence. "How bad?" Dante asked, his voice flat. "One's critical. The other will recover. But boss, this is a direct challenge. Viktor's testing you, seeing if you'll retaliate or if— Marco's eyes flickered to Sophia. If circumstances have made you soft. The implication hung in the air. Viktor thought Dante's devotion to his hospitalized wife had made him weak, vulnerable. And in their world, perceived weakness invited attack. Sophia watched Dante's face, saw the war happening behind his eyes. The old Dante would have been out of this room immediately, gathering his men, planning retaliation. The new Dante, the one who'd promised to change, sat frozen between two impossible choices. "Handle it," Dante finally said. "You know what needs to be done. Make it clear that attacking my people has consequences, but keep it proportional. No escalation that might start a full war." Marco's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Boss, with respect, Viktor hit us hard. A proportional response might not be enough to—" "I said handle it, Marco," Dante interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "You've been my second for 10 years. You know how I think, how I operate. Do what needs to be done, but do it smart. Keep me informed, but I'm staying here." Marco studied his boss for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Understood. I'll take care of it." He left, and the room fell into heavy silence. "You should have gone," Sophia said quietly. "I meant what I said about not wanting guilt-driven devotion, Dante. And I also don't want to be the reason your organization falls apart." "It won't fall apart," Dante replied. "Marco's capable. I didn't build this empire by being the only competent person in it." "But you're used to handling threats personally," Sophia observed. "Used to being the one in way. Control. This has to be killing you." Dante was quiet for a moment, then took her hand. "You want to know what's killing me? The thought that I almost lost you because I was too busy playing kingpin. That our child might have grown up without a mother because I couldn't be bothered to answer a text message. That's what's killing me, Sophia. Viktor Konstantin is a minor inconvenience compared to that." Sophia wanted to believe him. Desperately wanted to believe that this change was real, permanent. But she'd been disappointed too many times. "Tell me about the baby," Dante said, clearly trying to change the subject to safer ground. "What were you thinking when they told you? Were you happy? Scared?" Sophia's hand moved instinctively to her stomach, still flat but harboring the impossible miracle of new life. "Both," she admitted. "I'd started to suspect a few days before I collapsed. The fatigue made sense then, the dizziness. I was going to take a test, was planning how to tell you, and then," she paused, the memory of that terrifying afternoon still sharp. "Then I woke up on the bathroom floor with a neighbor pounding on the door." Dante's grip on her hand tightened. "You were alone. God, Sophia, you were alone and frightened, and I was in a meeting," Sophia finished. "I know. You've apologized, Dante. Multiple times. But apologies aren't what I need." "Then what do you need?" Dante asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Tell me, Sophia. Tell me what will make this right." "Time," she said simply. "Time to see if this version of you, the attentive, present husband, is real or just a response to crisis. Time to know if you'll still choose me when I'm not in a hospital bed fighting for my life." "I will," Dante insisted. "I swear to you." "Don't swear," Sophia interrupted gently. "Just show me, day by day, choice by choice. Show me that we matter more than your empire." It was a test, and they both knew it. A test that would take months, maybe years, to truly pass. But Dante nodded, accepting the challenge. The days that followed established a new rhythm. Dante split his time between Sophia's hospital suite and quick meetings with Marco in the building's executive conference room. He was never gone more than an hour, and he always returned with updates not just about business, but about preparations for the baby, plans he was making for their future. "I've been thinking about the penthouse," he said one afternoon while Sophia was picking at her lunch. "It's not really suitable for a baby. Too high up, too much glass, too many hard edges." Sophia looked up, surprised. "You love that penthouse. You had it custom designed." "I love you more," Dante replied simply. "And I want our child to grow up somewhere safer, warmer." Somewhere that feels like a home instead of a showpiece. He pulled out his phone, a new habit that would have been unthinkable a week ago, and showed her photos. There's a brownstone in Lincoln Park. 6 bedrooms, a yard, close to good schools. I put an offer in yesterday. Sophia stared at the photos, her throat tight with emotion. The house was beautiful, classic Chicago architecture, with modern updates, a tree-lined street, a neighborhood where children played and families walked dogs. It was everything she'd dreamed of when she'd married Dante, all the hopes she'd quietly abandoned over the past year. "You did this without asking me?" she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. Dante's expression fell. "I thought you'd be happy. But if you don't like it, we can look at other properties. I just wanted to show you that I'm serious about building a life together. A real life, not just, 'I love it,'" Sophia interrupted, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love it, Dante. It's perfect. I'm scared to trust this. Scared to believe that we can actually have this." Dante set the phone aside and gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of the IV lines and monitors. "I know," he whispered, against her hair. "I know I've given you every reason to doubt me, but I'm going to earn your trust back, Sophia. However long it takes." They stayed like that for a long moment, and Sophia allowed herself to hope. Just a little. "Doctor." Richardson cleared Sophia for discharge on day 8, with strict instructions for bed rest and follow-up appointments. The bleeding had stopped, the anemia was improving with supplements, and the baby was thriving despite the trauma Sophia's body had endured. "You're remarkably resilient, Doctor," Richardson told her with a warm smile. "Both of you are. But Mrs. Volkov, I need you to take it easy. No stress, plenty of rest, and if you experience any concerning symptoms, dizziness, bleeding, severe pain, you call immediately. No waiting, no trying to tough it out." "She'll call," Dante said firmly, "and I'll make sure of it." The brownstone purchase had moved with the kind of speed that only unlimited money could achieve. By the time Sophia was discharged, the Precipitareve house was furnished not by an impersonal decorator, but by Dante working from photos Sophia had saved on Pinterest over the past year. Photos she'd thought he'd never noticed her looking at. "How did you—" she started as they walked through the front door, but Dante just smiled. "I've always paid attention, Sophia. I just didn't always show it. That changes now." The master bedroom was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the backyard. The room next to it had been converted into a nursery, gender-neutral yellows and greens, since they didn't know yet if the baby was a boy or girl. A rocking chair sat by the window, soft blankets already stacked in the crib, children's books lining a small shelf. "It's too much," Sophia whispered, overwhelmed. "You did all this in 8 days?" "I had help," Dante admitted, "and motivation. I want our child to come home to something beautiful. Something that says both parents were excited, prepared, ready." Sophia sank into the rocking chair, her hand on her stomach. "We don't even know if it's a boy or girl yet." "Doesn't matter," Dante said, kneeling beside the chair. "Either way, they're going to be loved, protected, given every opportunity to grow up safe and happy. In the home of a crime boss," Sophia said quietly. The words she'd been avoiding for days finally spoken aloud. Dante's expression grew serious. "I've been thinking about that, about what kind of father I want to be, what kind of example I want to set." He took a breath. "I'm getting out, Sophia. Not immediately, you can't just walk away from what I've built without consequences. But over the next year, I'm going to transition my operations to Marco and the other lieutenants. Legitimate businesses, I'll keep and expand. The rest," he paused, "the rest needs to end." Sophia stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "You'd do that? Give up everything you've built?" "Not everything," Dante corrected. "Just the parts that would make our child ashamed. Of me. The parts that put you in danger. I can't change my past, Sophia, but I can shape our future. And I want a future where our son or daughter doesn't grow up afraid. where they can be proud of their father instead of frightened by him. That's going to be dangerous, Sophia said, her nursing background kicking in with practical concerns. People don't just let you leave that world. There will be challenges, tests, people who see it as weakness. Let them, Dante said, his voice hard with determination. I've been building this empire for 15 years, Sophia. I know how to dismantle it from the inside. How to make the transition look like evolution instead of retreat. It'll take time and strategy, but it's possible. And if someone like Viktor decides to take advantage of your transition, decides you're vulnerable and attacks, Dante's expression went cold. Then they'll learn that transitioning out doesn't mean I've forgotten how to fight. I'll protect what's mine, Sophia. Always. But I'll do it smarter, cleaner, with an exit strategy, instead of an endless cycle of violence. Sophia reached out to touch his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. I want to believe this is possible, that we can really have a normal life. Maybe not completely normal, Dante admitted with a slight smile. We'll probably always have more security than average families. I'll probably always have enemies who'd love to use you or our child against me. But normalish is still better than what we had, isn't it? Normalish sounds perfect, Sophia said, and for the first time in months, she meant it. The transition didn't happen overnight. There were complications, setbacks, moments when Dante's old life reached out with sharp claws to pull him back in. Viktor Konstantin made 2 more plays for power, both of which Marco handled with efficient brutality that required Dante's approval, but not his direct participation. A rival organization from Detroit tried to move into the vacuum. They perceived Dante leaving, resulting in a tense 3-day negotiation that had Dante locked in his study taking calls at all hours. Sophia had stood in the doorway on the second night, watching him argue in rapid Italian, and felt the old fear creeping back that this was who he really was, and the devoted husband was just a mask. But then Dante had seen her, had immediately ended the call with, "Handle it, I'll check in tomorrow," and had come to her, gathering her into his arms. "I'm sorry," he'd said. "I know this isn't what I promised. But it's temporary, Sophia. A few more months and the transition will be complete." "I'm not fragile," Sophia had replied. "I don't need you to pretend your work doesn't exist. I just need to know that when you're done with that call, you'll come to bed, that you'll be there in the morning. That's all I'm asking for." And he had been. Every morning, Dante was there when Sophia woke up. Every night, he came to bed instead of disappearing into his study. He attended her OB appointments religiously, his face lighting up when they heard the heartbeat, asking detailed questions about prenatal vitamins and birth plans. When Sophia was 16 weeks pregnant and finally starting to show, Dante threw a small dinner party at the brownstone. Just family, his sister Maria and her husband, Sophia's mother who flew in from Arizona, Marco and his wife. They announced the pregnancy together, Dante's arm around Sophia's waist, his hand resting protectively over the small bump. "To new beginnings?" Maria toasted, her eyes suspiciously bright. She pulled Dante aside later, while Sophia was showing her mother the nursery. "I never thought I'd see you like this," Maria said quietly. "Happy, settled. You've spent so long being the boss that I forgot you could be just Dante." "I forgot too," Dante admitted. Took, almost losing her to remember. "Don't lose sight of it again," Maria advised. "Whatever you're doing, however you're changing, keep doing. Because that woman up there loves you. But she won't survive another year of being married to your ghost." The words stayed with Dante. A constant reminder of how close he'd come to destroying the best thing in his life, through sheer neglect. The real test came when Sophia was 24 weeks pregnant. She'd been having a good day, feeling energetic enough to venture out to the farmer's market with Dante's security team trailing discreetly behind. She'd been picking out fresh vegetables, chatting with vendors, feeling almost normal for the first time since her collapse. Then the dizziness hit. Sudden and overwhelming, the world tilting sideways. She'd grabbed for the vendor's table, missed, and felt herself falling. She woke up in the hospital again, Mercy General's emergency department. Déjà vu so intense it was nauseating. But this time, Dante was already there, his hand gripping hers, his face pale with fear but present. Not absent in a meeting, not unreachable, present. The baby? Sophia asked immediately, her free hand moving to her stomach. Fine, Dante said quickly. The baby's fine. Strong heartbeat. Dr. Richardson already checked. It's you I'm worried about. Sophia, what happened? I don't know, she admitted. I was fine, and then everything spun. Dr. Richardson entered, his expression concerned but not alarmed. Mrs. Volkov, your blood work shows you're anemic again. Not as severe as before, but enough to cause dizziness and fainting. We're going to start you on iron infusions. Adjust your supplements. But I need you to be more careful. Your body is working hard to support the pregnancy, and you're pushing too hard. I just went to the farmer's market, Sophia protested. After doing laundry, cleaning the kitchen, and walking the neighborhood for an hour, Dante interjected, his tone gentle but firm. Sophia, I've been watching you push yourself all week. You're trying to prove you're not fragile, but nobody thinks you are. You just need to listen to your body. I'm tired of being weak, Sophia said, frustrated tears burning her eyes. Tired of always being the one who needs saving. You're not weak, Dante said firmly. You're growing a human being. That's about the strongest thing anyone can do. But strength doesn't mean never asking for help. The irony of Dante Volkov, who'd built an empire on never showing weakness, telling her to accept help, wasn't lost on Sophia. She started to laugh, then cry, and Dante just held her while Dr. Richardson quietly excused himself. I'm scared, Sophia admitted against Dante's chest. Scared something's wrong with me. That I won't be able to carry the baby to term. That I'll fail at this too. Too? Dante pulled back to look at her. Sophia, what have you failed at? Being your wife, she said quietly. If I'd been better, more interesting, more involved in your world, maybe you wouldn't have pulled away. Dante's expression crumpled. No, he said fiercely. No, Sophia. My pulling away had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with my own fears and inadequacies. You were never the problem. You were perfect, are perfect. I was the failure, not you. We're quite a pair, Sophia said with a watery laugh. Both terrified of failing each other. Then let's make a deal, Dante proposed. We stop trying to be perfect and just try to be honest. When you're scared, tell me. When you need help, ask. And I'll do the same. No more hiding, no more pretending. Just us, figuring it out together. Together, Sophia repeated, the word feeling like a promise. They kept Sophia overnight for observation and iron infusions. Dante stayed in the chair beside her bed, his laptop open but largely ignored, his attention on Sophia. Around midnight, when she should have been sleeping but couldn't quite settle, Dante started talking. I was 8 when my father brought me to my first business meeting, he said quietly. Old enough to understand what I was seeing, young, enough that it terrified me. There was a man who'd stolen from my father. Not much, a few $1,000s. But my father said theft was about disrespect, not the amount. Sophia listened, not speaking, sensing Dante needed to say this. They hurt him, Dante continued, his voice flat. Badly. And my father made me watch. Said I needed to understand that our world had rules, and breaking them had consequences. I had nightmares for months. He paused. I never wanted to be like him, Sophia. Cold, brutal, teaching through fear. But somehow over the years I became exactly that. You're not your father, Sophia said softly. I could be, Dante replied. That's what scares me. I have his capacity for violence, his willingness to hurt people to maintain control. The only difference is you. You make me want to be better. Our baby makes me want to be better. Then be better, Sophia said simply. Not perfect, not sinless, just better than yesterday. That's all anyone can ask, Dante leaned forward, pressing his forehead to their joined hands. I don't deserve you. Probably not. Sophia agreed with a slight smile. But you're stuck with me anyway. The pregnancy continued with its share of complications and scares, but Dante was there for all of it. 28 weeks, when they discovered they were having a boy, and Dante cried openly in the ultrasound room. 32 weeks, when Sophia developed gestational diabetes and Dante learned to give insulin injections, his hands surprisingly gentle. 36 weeks, when false labor sent them to the hospital at 3 a.m, and Dante held Sophia's hand through every contraction until the doctors confirmed it wasn't time yet. Soon, though, Dr. Richardson said with a smile. Your son is eager to meet you. By week 38, Dante had completed most of his transition. Marco had taken over the majority of operations. Legitimate businesses were thriving under Dante's more focused attention. The violent aspects of his empire were being carefully dismantled, sold off, or absorbed by other organizations in ways that avoided war. Viktor actually called to congratulate me, Dante told Sophia over dinner one evening, his tone wry. Said I'd accomplished what most men in our world only dream of getting out alive. Are you happy? Sophia asked. Truly happy with the changes? Dante considered the question seriously. I thought I'd miss it more. The power, the control, the adrenaline. But mostly I just feel relieved. Like I've been holding my breath for 15 years and can finally exhale. He reached across the table to take her hand. And yes, I'm happy. Happier than I've ever been. Labor started on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days before Sophia's due date. Appropriate contractions that had Dante simultaneously excited and terrified. They made it to the hospital with plenty of time, checked into the private birthing suite Dante had reserved months in advance. 12 hours later, at 2:47 inches the morning, Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby boy weighing 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and his father's gray eyes. He's perfect, Dante breathed, holding his son for the first time with the kind of reverent wonder usually reserved for religious experiences. Sophia, he's absolutely perfect. What should we name him? Sophia asked, exhausted but radiantly happy. They'd discussed names but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Dante knew. Alessandro, he said. After your father. Alessandro Dante Volkov. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Her father had died when she was 12, and she'd missed him every day since. You'd do that? Give up having a junior? This isn't about my ego, Dante replied. It's about honoring the people who shaped us. Your father was a good man, Sophia. I want our son to have that legacy, not mine. Alessandro Dante Volkov came home to the brownstone in Lincoln Park on a crisp autumn morning. The nursery was ready, the house was, filled with flowers from well-wishers, and Dante had taken a month off from all business obligations. A month? Marco had repeated in disbelief when Dante told him, Boss, you've never taken more than a week off in your life. I've never had a son before. Dante had replied simply, The business can survive without me. My family can't. Those first weeks were exhausting, overwhelming, and perfect. Night feedings where Dante would bring Alessandro to Sophia, then stay up holding his son while Sophia slept. Days of learning how to change diapers, give baths, interpret different cries. The terrifying first doctor's appointment where they were convinced something must be wrong, only to have the pediatrician pronounce Alessandro perfectly healthy. On Alessandro's 1-month birthday, Sophia found Dante in the nursery at 3 a.m, holding their sleeping son and just watching him breathe. Can't sleep? She asked quietly from the doorway. Didn't want to miss anything, Dante replied. He changes so fast. Every day he's different. I keep thinking about all the moments I missed with you, all the dinners, the conversations, the chances to just be together. I don't want to miss any of this. Sophia moved to stand beside him, looking down at their son. You know what I realized today? What? I can't remember the last time I was angry with you. The last time I felt lonely or ignored or like I was competing for your attention. She looked up at Dante. You really did it. You changed. We changed, Dante corrected. You taught me what matters, showed me what I stood to lose. I just finally got smart enough to listen. So what happens now? Sophia asked. You've transitioned out of most of your old business. Alessandro's here and healthy. We're happy. Do we just live? Just live, Dante agreed with a smile. Maybe that's revolutionary enough. A former crime boss choosing family dinners and baby bottles over power and violence. Who would have thought? I would have, Sophia said softly. I always knew you had it in you to be this man. You just had to be scared enough to find him. Dante shifted Alessandro to one arm so he could pull Sophia close with the other. They stood like that in the quiet nursery, the three of them together, and Dante felt a peace he'd never known existed. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably Marco with some minor business issue that needed input. Dante ignored it. Whatever it was could wait until morning. Right now, in this moment, he was exactly where he needed to be, holding his wife, holding his son, holding on to the second chance he'd been given when Sophia had fought for life, calling his name. And this time, he wasn't going to waste a single moment of it. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.